Hello Year 5 and welcome to your English lesson for today. Now we've started looking at newspaper reports and the different features, and yesterday we looked at headlines. So today we're going to have a quick whistle-stop tour all the way through some of our features, and as we work through the week next week we're going to focus on some of them specifically, and we're going to start building together our newspaper reports. So newspapers have a range of features, obviously are there to attract the reader, so the general public that are going to read the newspapers. Now, we've already looked at some of these features, so we know that it has to include an interesting headline and an interesting subheadline, so that's the extra bit of information that goes underneath. Now, that name of the headline goes right at the top of our newspaper. We then have our introductory paragraph, which includes the 5 W's, so our who, what, when, where, and why. And we're going to recap that very briefly in one of our next lessons. We then have a picture underneath to give an idea of what the newspaper report's going to be about. Now, underneath that picture, we have what we call a caption, so it's a little bit of information about what the picture's showing us. Then we have our main facts of the events. This is the main body of our newspaper report. And within that main body, we need to make sure that we're writing in third person and past tense because we're reporting on something that's already happened. Now, one of the key things that we're going to be looking at, that we've spent a very long time looking at, is using quotes. So we're going to be using a lot of our direct speech. That's going back to our speech burger. And then you have a small conclusion at the end with potential next steps. Now, we looked at next steps when we did our police report about what might need to happen further in our investigation. It's very similar to a newspaper report. So let's go through those examples a little bit more. Okay, so we've got our main headline. Okay, now this is what we have on our newspaper to grab our readers' attention. Now, we looked at this yesterday and we looked at different kind of puns that we could use in our headlines. We can always make sure that our headlines rhyme, and also good use of alliteration. Now, we know that alliteration is when words start with the same letter. So I'm going to show you some headlines, and I want you to sit there and think about, well, why did that one catch my eye? What was it I liked about that one? So the first we've got is Roman coin surprise for Mrs. Ship. So there's no pun really in that sentence, and there isn't very much alliteration or anything interesting that I think sparks, but Roman coin surprise for Mrs. Ship. So we know that it's going to be an exciting story because we know to find anything from an ancient time is going to be very valuable to us. Back to earth with a bump, and lucky lottery winners win again. Okay, now I skipped past that bumps one because you're going to be looking at that as one of our later ones later. But lucky lottery, okay, and winners win again. We've got lots of alliteration in there. Okay, so that one grabs your attention because it flows nicely off the tongue. And then we had wicked wolf gets his just desserts. Okay. Now, when he gets the just desserts, that's when you get what's coming to you. It's a little bit like karma, but we've also got our wicked wolves. We've also got our alliteration in there as well. So we have our introductory paragraph. Now, this is when we have our 5 W's. So in that paragraph, it's almost summarising the entire newspaper report. So what happened? When did it happen? Where did it happen? Who might have been involved? And why did it happen? Okay, so let's have a look at this example here. So back to Earth with a bump. So after 6 months' stay on the International Space Station, astronauts Tim Peake, Yuri Malakchenko and Timothy Kopra have finally returned home to Earth. It's got a little bit of extra information there. And then we have our opening paragraph. Pause the video. Do you think you can spot the 5 W's? Okay, so we have our who. We know that it's Tim, Yuri and Timothy. We know where it is. We know it's from them being on the International Space Station, but now they're finally on Earth. We know the why behind it because we know that they're the first British astronauts to be able to go up to space. We have our where, well, we know they're on Earth, and we know that at that point in time, they've landed safely from space. But if you look at the caption of the picture, it also tells us they landed in Kazakhstan as well. Okay, and we have our when, so we have last week. So you can spot all of our 5 W's just in that little paragraph. So then we have our captions on our pictures. So the idea of having photos and captions is it helps give the story, it will help tell the story by giving the reader a bit of a snapshot, almost like a click image of what happened or where it's happened or who it might have even happened to. Now, the caption that goes underneath explains to the reader what's happening in the picture, and it usually goes underneath. So if we have a look at this picture here, what do you think a report using this picture would be about? Now I'm looking at this thing, this is a running track. We've got some people lining up around this running track, and usually when we have big events like this, it's some form of sporting event. Now this could be some form of the Olympics, okay? Now this person's Houghton Fred, so knowing my athletics background, I know that this could be part of a relay. So this might be someone that's already started running off and they're about to start doing their relay laps. So we know this might be reporting some kind of big sport event or even the Olympics. So then we have the facts about the main events. So usually this is all the information about what's happened. Now it's got to be factually correct because we don't want to be reporting incorrect information. Now we have to think about whether these are facts or opinions. This is going to link to our reading lesson, okay, that you will have either done today or will be doing today. So let's have a look at some of these sentences. Okay, so the man had a beard and wore a black coat. I am the smartest person in the class. Yellow is the best colour. You shouldn't go swimming in the sea. It took the runner 84 days to complete the race. Mrs. James lives at 103 Blake Drive, and the truck arrived to pick up the jewels at 3 o'clock. What I would like you to do is I'd like to pause the video and I want you to create a table. What is fact and what is opinion? And I want to see if you can put those statements there in the correct columns. Off you go. Okay, let's see if we came up with the same answers then. So, my fact and opinions, I have decided to split it like this. Okay, now if you have already completed the reading lesson before this today, you know that when we've got fact, it's factual information. How have we got the proof from the evidence and the text to tell us, well, that is true? And we know that an opinion is based on what someone thinks and what someone feels. So that's how I've split mine up. So well done if you've got the same ones there. If you think that maybe you might want to swap one of yours over, then go back and have a check. So, once we've gone on from the main body, we need to make sure within that part of our newspaper we're writing in third person because we're writing about what's happened to other people's. It's not from our perspective or what we think. So it's more based on fact. This is where we use our pronouns. But we also need to remember to make sure we write in past tense. Now, because newspapers are usually an example of a recount, obviously they're recounting something that's happened in the past. So you've almost got to write it so that you are informing that reader that it is something that's happened in the past. Now, one of the big things we have in newspapers is quotes. Now, we know this from our police reports and our speech burger. Okay, we know that these quotations are what people have said and who has said it. Now, this makes stories seem credible. Now, when we say that something is credible, that means that that person is giving evidence that's going to support that story. So if I said that I had some chocolates stolen from my desk at school, one of you comes in and says, oh, well, yes, Miss Humphrey, I happened to be walking to the locker and I saw such and such sneaking in and out of your classroom. That statement there gives extra information to prove the story. So it makes it credible, but it also gives an understanding of other people's opinions that were involved in this event. Now, it's important to remember our speech and our inverted commas, but we're going to recap that in one of our later lessons. So here are some examples, okay? So I've skipped those two because I wanted to look at this one. So it's a brilliant feeling. It's been a long road. I'm happy, but I'm relieved. It's great to be in the history books as one of the greatest. I'm proud of myself, he told reporters. So you can see all the speech in there, but because it's also speech, it's quite informal. So we've got the use of contractions. So we've got the it and the I'm rather than I am proud or it is a brilliant feeling. But we've got all the key speech in there, and then we've got the reporting clause at the end, which is important to remember. So we then have what we have as our concluding paragraph. Now, this often tells the reader what might happen next. We know when we looked at our pigs, we knew there had to be an investigation that happened. So we might have had to get forensics in or DNA or even have some more reporters come in or police officers to get statements from the local residents. So that's going to be a key part of our paragraph that's going to infer that there might be some extra steps. So, what do you think might happen next in this report about some very lucky winners? Okay, so you're going to have a look at this one as your task at the end. So we need to think about, well, what might happen next? These lottery winners, they've won the lottery. What do you think they then might do with it? Okay, so that's going to be a task that you're going to look at in a minute. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some of the different features of our newspaper report. Okay, so what I would like you to do is you have a copy of this in front of you. Now, there are two different copies that I've sent home. They are very much identical to each other, just some of the paragraphs have additional information, but one way or another, both examples include all of the skills. So all you have to do is to pick one example of the newspaper report to have a look at. Now, all I want you to do is see if you can skew and scan where you think you might be able to find those features that we've had a look at, and then I'm going to model and show you where those different skills are. So just give yourself 5 minutes to have a quick flick through. You might want to get a pencil or highlighter out and maybe annotate it yourself and see if you can find any of the key skills that we've looked at today. Okay, so I'm going to show you an example, and I have to apologise because this little paragraph will not disappear, but it will come in handy in a minute. So for now, just ignore him, he's not there. So we have our interesting headline, okay? Roman coin surprise for Mrs. Ship, and we've got the person who's reported it underneath. We then have our introductory paragraph. Now this includes our 5 W's. So this is laying the land down for where this newspaper report is going. We've also made sure that in our paragraphs we've written in third person and past tense, so you can find some examples of that in that particular paragraph. We then have our final concluding paragraph, which is going to explain what happens next. So that's usually right at the end of our newspaper. Now, if we go back to the body of our newspaper, we've got our main factual events. Now, some of those facts are still included in that final paragraph because they're still main events and they're still key facts to the newspaper and to our story. And then building on that, once we've had our main body, that's when we start to include some of our quotes. Now here we know that we've written in direct speech because we've had to use our quotation marks and our correct punctuation, okay? Now at the very top of it, something we haven't noticed, we've got twinkle times. Now this time around I use a little bit of our alliteration. So this is actually the name of the newspaper. So when we looked through on our reading lesson the other day and in our English lesson, we looked at the different types of newspapers. So we had your broadsheets and we had our tabloids and we have the different titles of our newspaper reports. Now the last thing we're going to look at is the picture. So here we've actually got a picture of some of the Roman coins and there's a little caption underneath to explain what that picture represents. So well done if you got a couple of those examples in. Now what you're going to do is you are now going to have a go. So going back to the lottery winners that we looked at a minute ago, this is why I skipped over because I didn't want to give you too many clues. So what I want you to do now is have a go at creating your own key. So based on the toolkit that we looked at the beginning of the video, so you can go back and rewind it to that first slide that's got all of that key information in. And I want you to see if you can identify the key features of this newspaper report. Now you're going to need to write yourself a colour-coded key like we usually do in our reading lessons. If you don't have a lot of colours at home, that's fine. What you can do is you can always create a numbered key. So if you're looking for headline, you can draw it in a little 1. If you're looking for reported speech or direct speech, you can write it in a little number as well. And I want you to then go through and try and identify where you think those key features have been used. Okay? And then as we work our way through the week, we're going to start building on all of those different skills and you are going to have a go at writing some specific parts of your newspaper reports. Okay? Good luck, Year 5.